show me a lazy employee who supposedly cannot be gotten rid of because of their due process rights or tenure right, I'm going to show you a member of management who's even lazier and more incompetent.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We got a YouTube comment, and occasionally we will reply to those if we think that it's worth it. And this one is a comment on a very old video, actually, a video that we did with current NLRB press secretary back when she was the president of the nonprofit employees union for IFPTE, Kayla Blado. We were talking to her, and we got a question about, then, what about your lazy coworker, right? And so this person commented on the video and asked us to talk more in depth about it. And so, whatever, I'm happy to. And it's been a couple of years since we've talked about this specific thing, at least directly. And so this comment says, I think you should speak on what your union can do when a coworker is being lazy and manipulative in the workplace. What can your union do when a coworker is hiding behind the union? Can your union help you put an end to such behaviors from individuals who take advantage of the union's protection? Some coworkers know unions will fight for their job even though they lack professionalism, have poor attitude in the workplace, are lazy and manipulative. This would be extremely helpful knowledge for those of us facing issues of this nature with coworkers who abuse union jobs. So, Adam, you actually had, we talked about this last week off the air because we were, we were looking at this comment and kind of thinking about it. And you mentioned something about, like, y'all had in your union, you had something like a pledge that you would take.
Yeah, I mean, seeing this comment, I will say that that's an important issue, and that's something that those of us in the labor movement do have to confront from time to time. Of course, we all know there's tropes out there about the lazy union worker, but sometimes tropes happen in real life.
Right.
And no matter where you work, whether it's union or non-union, chances are you're going to run into a coworker who is, maybe not taking the job as serious as you are. But the first thing that came to my mind was a code of conduct that we had in the last union I belonged to. I spent over 5 years as a member of the National Staff Organization, NSO, and we did have a NSO union members code of conduct, and I'm going to kind of refer to that to start off this conversation because I think it's a good way to ground the conversation. And this is something that we would all agree to abide by. Starting with, I will not criticize any union colleague except to the individual directly. If any union colleague is being criticized in my presence, I will confront the criticism and ask that it stop. I will not participate in any conversation with management that criticizes or negatively speculates about any union colleague. I will settle my differences with union colleagues within the union. I will engage in debate, offer others every opportunity for debate and respect minority viewpoints, and I will observe and support the majority mandate of my union. I will avoid actions that undermine the bargaining and contract rights of other unions in the workplace, and I will not perform the work of a worker who is off the job because he or she is taking a stand for the rights of workers to fair treatment and decent working conditions. So, to unpack that for a sec, I think it all starts with talking to the person in question. You've got a coworker that you believe is being lazy, being manipulative, and trying to kind of use the union as a shield to get away with it. My first bit of advice is go speak to that person directly. And Jacob, you even mentioned there's biblical grounding there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't just something that maybe a unionist would recommend. Your preacher may recommend the same thing.
Right.
Go straight to the source. And
yeah, well, and
go
that's,
ahead.
And
Go ahead.
well, and on the biblical nature of it, the people who are going to be, and this is an important issue in that occasionally it will happen, and so let's address it as if the question is being asked in good faith. But like you said, it is also a trope and is used in not good faith ways. It is used as a way to say that workers don't deserve rights. and that your boss should have unilateral authority to fire you, and to discipline you, and whether or not we think that bosses should exist in the way that they do, the fact is that they do exist in the way that they do, and so their role would be to discipline workers, and discipline workers in line with the law and the contract. And so there's no reason for us to be doing their job for them, right? And people talk about the union protecting lazy coworkers. All that is the union enforcing the contract.
Right.
Right? So if there is a lazy coworker, or if there is a coworker who is legitimately damaging to the employer in a business sense, it is the job of management to pursue discipline, and pursue discipline in line with the contract that they agreed to. And so if they pursue discipline out of line with that contract, then it is the union's duty to enforce the contract, right? It's the union's duty to enforce the contract. And if it is such that a person who is legitimately bad at their job, or perhaps damaging to the company in a business, as far as the business is concerned, is protected by the contract, whose fault is that? It's the fault of management for not following the contract and the necessary disciplinary procedures, because no business is going to agree to a contract that does not allow them to get rid of bad employees. So, if bad employees are sticking around or are not improving, that's the fault of management, not the union. And it's important to lay that out there. But speaking of the biblical thing, this is often talked about by people who are going to bring this up, are often going to be like right-wing Christians, people who consider themselves Christians, as like a whatever Mike Pence would say, I'm a Christian, a conservative, and then a Republican. They conceive of themselves as Christians, and Christians first, even before they're conservative, right? And but they've kind of been inculcated in this individualism and work ethic and whatever. And there's nothing wrong with a work ethic. A work ethic is good and important. But they're going to be the ones oftentimes who are going to say unions make employees lazy or whatever. So what does the Bible say? That's a good question. What does the Bible say when you, maybe as a worker or as somebody, have an issue with somebody? And so in Matthew, they're asking this question as it relates to members of the church, right? And so it's obviously they're not exactly talking about what do you do in workplace situations, but I think there's some teachings that we can pull out of that. Matthew says, Matthew 18:15-17, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. That's the first thing that you do. And I actually had somebody who has said this to me, who has said this about unions make people lazy, unions are bad, blah, blah, blah. I actually had them talk to me about a situation where they were offended by their coworker and went and told the boss first before they told their coworker. And it was over some really silly issue, like the person was cussing too much, right? And they went and said that to the boss. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you want to bring in the threat? Because why would you tell the boss? Because there's this threat of discipline and potentially even termination when you get the boss involved. Why would you do that? Why
Don't
would
be
you
a snitch.
Yeah. Why would you not just tell if it is so important to you? Like if it is actually offensive to you to hear dirty words, then be an adult and tell the person, right? Tell the person.
Yeah, there's a reason why I think that's referenced in Scripture, and I think there's a reason why it was the first thing in my old union's code of conduct, because it works. It's the right thing to do. You should not go run to management. To me, that should be reserved for like the absolute last step of a multi-step process, or like a complete emergency where like you're about to get run over by a forklift and you have to yell stop, right? Maybe management standing there. Okay, that's fair. But generally speaking, go confront the person directly. And I'll share a personal experience with that. Um, in my old local, there were some rumors going around about one of our leaders that supposedly she was angling for a promotion. That would have put her in management. Well, maybe we shouldn't trust her. She's trying to get into management, blah, blah, blah. And after the second or third person threw that rumor out to me, I asked, well, have y'all talked to her about this? Oh, well, no, no, no. I said, okay. So my next phone call was to her,
Right.
the person who's being rumored about. And I said, hey, I just want you to know I've had more than one person say this to me, and I'm calling you not to spread a rumor, but to address it.
Mm-hmm.
They said, you're trying to get into management. We can't trust you. We shouldn't have you in your leadership. And she cleared it up for me. She had not applied for the position, had no intention of applying for the position. It was just basically some assumptions were made that then got a life of their own, as rumors tend to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, she respected the hell out of me for being willing to call her directly and ask her, because I was the only person who had the guts to do that. And once she had that conversation with me, of course, I was able to clear up the rumor, but more importantly, like, she had more respect for me, and our relationship really strengthened at that point, because she knew I was going to be upfront with her. If something was being talked about within the union, I wasn't going to pull punches. I would be willing to have a tough, awkward conversation, and vice versa. And that wasn't the only tough, awkward conversation I had like that.
Right.
But I would say that most of the time, folks will respect you for being willing to do that, because I'd much rather you come to me and chew me out to my face and call me every name in the book to my face than run around behind the scenes.
Right.
Either to my brothers and sisters in the union, or, God forbid, to people in management. So that's the first step. And even if that person, this is a legitimately, like, manipulative, lazy person.
Right.
Okay, maybe they're not going to respect you for being direct.
Right.
But anyone else who has to get involved here will respect you for that. And frankly, it's going to be one of the first things they ask, because I would say if you can't resolve it 101, that's when you can bring the union into it to try to solve it within the union. Maybe your steward facilitates a conversation, your local president facilitates a conversation. Maybe it's something that rises to the level that you actually need to bring it up at a union meeting.
Right. And that's what, that's basically what the Bible prescribes. It says, okay, look, if go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you've gained your brother. And that's exactly what happened with you and your the union member that you had questions about, or that other people had questions about. Your relationship was strengthened there.
Right.
But if he does not listen, which will happen sometimes, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. So here you're bringing in more people, maybe somebody that this person respects. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And that's maybe when we're starting to talk about union leadership. And then if he refuses to even listen to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile. And maybe at that point, we're talking about, they're no longer a brother, we're going to management, something like that. That's that potentially.
Right. If it's something that, is putting people at risk, putting people's safety at risk, obviously that's something to be taken seriously. There's degrees of this. Someone who kind of slacks off a little bit or is occasionally late versus someone, who legitimately puts the entire operation at risk or is doing harm to others. But I think it's interesting that, the Union Code of Conduct and
the Bible.
There's so many parallels there.
It really is interesting, and I this is not to say, obviously, I don't think that regular listeners are going to think that we're like a religious show or anything, but both of us have sort of a religious background, and so it's something that I thought about that came out to me when I read this question. And so, just to repeat the question is basically, you should speak on what your union can do when a coworker is being lazy and manipulative in the workplace. Well, the first thing is for you. Like, if this is something they're being lazy and they're being manipulative and it's bothering you and you feel like it's affecting your ability to work, then you should, presumably you're an adult, right? You're in a workplace, presumably you're an adult. talk to them. Be an adult, right? Go and talk to them. Tell them your issues. Do it, and don't be a jerk about it, right? Do it in a brotherly way, in a sisterly, in a comradely way, right? Talk to them. If that doesn't work, bring in some other of your coworkers, some other comrades, some other union members. Talk to them about that. If that doesn't work, go to your local union. Say, look, I really need, this is really affecting my ability to work. Is there anything that we can do? And then if that doesn't work and it's something that is safety related, or like, there's a real danger, then maybe you can talk to your union.
Otherwise, let management do management's
Right.
job. And that's something that I was going to mention earlier. You brought this up, and I've heard it a lot in the context of teachers, obviously with the work I've done, but where people complain, oh, well, you've got this tenured teacher who's lazy and doesn't do anything for the kids, but they just can't get rid of them. They're tenured. Bull. That is
Right.
complete BS.
Yeah.
If you show me a lazy employee or a bad employee who supposedly cannot be gotten rid of because of their due process rights or tenure rights, I'm going to show you a member of management who's even lazier and more incompetent
Exactly.
and worse at their job, right? Because if someone's legitimately bad at their job, they're violating policy, they're doing things that put people at risk or at harm, it shouldn't be hard to document that. It shouldn't be hard to put a corrective action plan in place. These things are not that hard. So if you have, sticking with the example of teacher, if you have a terrible teacher who year after year is not really teaching the kids anything and they're a joke,
Exactly.
that is not, at a certain point, that is on the principal, the superintendent, the HR director. And I just saw a comment in the chat, management's always lazier than the employees.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, and look, like I said, so a lot of times this is really just, this is just put out there, not in good faith. Sometimes by management, but
Right.
there are people that do have this actual worry, and so we want to address it in good faith.
Right, yeah,
for
and
people that are going through a union campaign that maybe somebody has put this in their mind in bad faith, but now they as a worker have this concern in good faith, and so we
Yeah.
want to address it in bad faith. But we also do want to point out that a lot of times when we're talking about unions make people lazy, it's BS, and
Right.
and also.
But,
Think about management.
like you said, it's something to take into consideration. And when you have these issues pop up, I think that's also a way of framing it is like, look, brother, you're making us look bad.
Right.
It's hard enough to do our jobs. It's hard enough to maintain our union and try to fight for the kind of pay and benefits we deserve. We can't have you out here slacking off, making us all look bad.
Yep.
And we don't want to waste our dues dollars having to constantly defend you because you're an idiot. So let's get it together. Maybe not call him an idiot, but not the first conversation at least. But yeah, so it's a interesting discussion.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.